My name is Lane Mosher with a Sustainable Forest Education Cooperative, and in this short video, I'll be going over translating a Minnesota DNR treatment into a case study on the Great Lakes Silviculture Library. So this is an existing case study. The title references treatment dealing with buckthorn in the sandstone forestry area. Now I have a few example documents here. You might have more or less context, but these are items or documents that you're able to easily access or reference. And you've already gone through the work in many cases of filling out the information that would then need to be populated in the template here. For example, we have the stand information here, everything from the soil texture to the treatment area and stand acres that will allow you to populate swiftly the stand information section. Another document is the timber appraisal report, and this requires a bit more context and editing on the forester's part simply because sometimes a treatment might be part of a larger series of cutting blocks. But again, you have some context here for what actually happened with the treatment, or at least what was prescribed, and then any sort of assessments thereafter. Another thing we have as a reference is FIM data. And so here we just have a screenshot taken from the forest inventory module. You are also able to just copy or paste information into Excel. Again, this template has much more seamless integration with Excel and being able to paste tables in wherever they're needed. And so in this case, we just have a screenshot from FIM as far as some of the pre-treatment understory regeneration data. We also have regeneration surveys. And so being able to take these in, digitizing them and taking them in, or including screenshots. We prefer having them in tables that are kind of like this one that has been copied over from Excel. That assists with accessibility concerns because sometimes screen readers might not be able to interpret a screenshot of a document like this. But regardless, you have this information here, and so that's what you can use to populate some of these other sections. So in this case, it's a regeneration survey, and so we could certainly put that in the post-treatment assessment. So as we're working through the template here on the right, one strategy that I've had success with, it's not necessarily something that everyone has to do. I like to write the overview last. That allows me to kind of take some of the key pieces or the summary pieces and then put those in based on what came out of the treatment here. Or for other treatments, it might make more sense to write this first. That's up to the author. In this case, this isn't dealing with bottomland hardwood, so we wouldn't need to fill this part out. As far as the silviculture objectives, so if we go back to our other document here, we do already have kind of our desired future condition. And so in this case, it's vigorous aspen stand. And so we'd just be able to paste that over. We could add some more context here because we have our brief silvicultural objective statement, which is just a sentence to give folks kind of a glance of if this case study is relevant to them, what it's about. So we could take that desired future stand condition, paste that here. And in this case, another part of this treatment was dealing with buckthorn. And so then we would add a bit more context as far as how the forester is hoping to tackle this buckthorn issue. And so the species composition, your growth and stocking, this is all information you have. In this case, we have some pre-treatment forest health issues. That information is just right here. We have the hypoxylin canker, and so that's where you could describe the hypoxylin canker and the extent of the forest health issue, and then any mortality. So for the landowner objectives and situation, this is where you can include verbiage from your SFRMP, as well as kind of the more specific site or area objectives for this, for the stand or for the region. And now for the silviculture prescription, this is where we really want to put a lot of detail here. And so in this case, it might not be enough to be able to simply copy over some of these pieces, but instead use some of the information that you have here, that you have in your report here, and any other documentation, as well as what you observed while you were in the stand, and really put together kind of a timeline or schedule. Some folks like to put it in a table. Other folks will just simply write it down in the narrative. But we want to make sure that the prescription is really clear. So again, you can look at for the specific cutting block that you're referencing on this timber appraisal report. That's where you can put in some of the pieces here of what was prescribed. Now, for what actually happened, that's where you can put, for example, the treatment was conducted as prescribed. If the harvest was uneventful or there wasn't any need to pivot or have any other changes, that's where we could document this. Also think about kind of what went well and why. If you were administering this, and maybe some things that you might have wanted to change, maybe if you got some action shots or kind of before and after as far as the treatment itself. So for subsequent entries, in this case, a case study that began in 2017 and culminated in a timber harvest in 2019, if there were subsequent actions beyond just regen surveys, then that's where you would put this information here. For post-treatment assessment, again, we have that regeneration survey data here, and that's where you would be able to put this information. And so any graphics or data will help provide foresters some context on how this treatment worked, if it was effective, and kind of what folks can expect if they try to implement something similar in their work area. If folks come back after 3 or 5 years, that's where this would go. And so we'd just be able to add further data or a couple sentence narrative to explain subsequent results. And so that will just get kind of tacked on here in the assessment follow-up. Another piece here that I should add with the post-treatment assessment is that not only are you providing some data in table form or the like, but also with that couple sentence narrative, providing some context as far as, did this accomplish the silvicultural objectives? So that's valuable context for foresters that are going to be reading through this and thinking about if they want to replicate it on their own land. And particularly a year or two after the treatment or beyond, if you're back there looking at the stand, collecting regen data, if you're able to take photos and insert them here, again, that would just help folks to get an idea of the results or kind of the success or not, or surprises that might have occurred during this treatment. As far as plans for future treatments, this is where you can put simple text related to monitoring. In this case, it doesn't seem likely that there's going to be any sort of intermediate treatments in the near future here for this aspen stand, but they might be looking at subsequent monitoring for buckthorn or spot treatments to follow up in a couple years. But this is where you can put that information and give folks a little bit of a roadmap too of, all right, I implemented this treatment, what's next? Another thing you can add into the what actually happened during the treatment section is referencing the herbicide application report or other documents that you might have will really support foresters that are viewing this case study and want to replicate it. As far as the summary and lessons learned and additional thoughts, this, kind of like the overview, really ties together the case study, and especially this piece here of what would you do differently if you could do it over. Sometimes there's surprises and nature has other ideas, and sometimes you just can't quite put your finger on why something wasn't as successful as you might have hoped. I'm afraid this isn't something that you can directly copy over from any of your supporting documents or the like, but all the same, it helps tie together the case study and give folks some takeaways and maybe some future directions. So this is the completed case study here. Again, we had the overview that kind of ties together the case study, just like the summary piece at the very end, providing kind of a broad glance at what folks will be expecting out of this case study. Again, describing the silviculture objectives and expanding further. I think this was basically taken from the supporting document there. Our pre-treatment stand description and condition, again, referencing FIM. So this author opted to use a table to lay out their prescription. Other folks like doing a narrative or bullet points. Again, the important part is that we have enough detail. So this is one of the most referenced sections, predictably, when folks are looking at case studies, and this is an important part. We want to make sure there's enough detail here. And again, you'll have already done the heavy lifting just by filling out the different forms and collecting data during the course of your stand exams. And here it looked like it was, as far as the implementation of the treatment, pretty straightforward. So this is another image that folks took. It looks like a screen grab, and they're able to paste that directly into the document, into the template. And then when that template gets emailed, then I'm able to take that image and then upload it directly to the website itself. And so then it can fit wherever it is you think it makes sense to have that. Here, we're also thinking about the post-treatment assessment narrative of, did this work? What are some takeaways here? And just kind of unpacking the treatment. For the plans for future treatments, again, this just looks like monitoring and potentially spot treatments. And so for a lot of these case studies that are regeneration focused, this might be a relatively light section. It might be just, I'm going to monitor for 5 years. For intermediate treatments or for sites that might be harvested in the next 5 to 10 to 15 years, what conditions would suggest that, 5 years isn't enough? I'm going to recommend perhaps pushing this back a little bit as far as the treatment. So putting some of that timeline there for intermediate and regeneration harvest treatments could be really effective for folks to give them some idea. So similar to the prescription, having some detail here, kind of your thoughts of, based on my experience, based on how the treatment was implemented, just kind of a summary of what you did and what you think went well, and maybe what you would change. And that allows us to grow and reflect and think about future foresters that might be looking at this as kind of a leaping off point to implement a similar treatment in their own work area.